Okay, let's dive right in. We're looking at this really growing tension, right, between online platforms and AI companies.
Yeah, specifically this new lawsuit, Reddit versus Anthropic.
Exactly. You sent over this great stack of notes, articles, gives us a really good look into what's actually happening.
Right. And I think for this deep dive, the mission is pretty clear. We need to cut through the noise,
hmm
get to the heart of this legal fight. What are both sides arguing?
And crucially, what does it all mean? For AI training data, sure, but also for these platforms and maybe even for your own privacy online.
That's the big question, isn't it? Because look, the sources suggest this isn't just another data scraping lawsuit. It
Yeah.
feels different.
Yeah, the way Reddit's approaching it seems, well, pretty strategic.
Yeah.
We found some surprising details about why they're taking this specific path. So, yeah, let's unpack it.
Okay, so first, context is key, right? Let's talk Reddit.
Right.
Think of it like this massive online community, millions of people talking, discussing, arguing about everything imaginable.
Billions of posts and comments, user-generated.
Exactly. And that makes it, well, incredibly valuable for training AI, especially language models. It's real human conversation, warts and all.
And it's important to remember Reddit isn't totally against sharing data. The sources are clear on this.
No, not at all.
They've got these big licensing deals already. Google, OpenAI.
Hmm.
These are formal agreements.
With compensation, terms, controls.
Right. It shows they know the data is valuable and they have a preferred way for people to access it, above board.
Definitely sets a baseline. Now bring in Anthropic.
Okay.
Founded by ex-OpenAI people. Huge funding. They make Claude, which is a direct competitor to ChatGPT.
A major player in the AI space.
And the sources mentioned they've shown interest in high-quality data like Reddit's for a while now. Their CEO, Dario Amodei, even mentioned specific valuable subreddits in a paper back in 2021.
So they knew this type of content was useful.
It certainly seems that way.
Okay, so you've got Reddit wanting controlled, paid access,
Hmm.
and Anthropic, a competitor, needing data, potentially eyeing Reddit's content. Which brings us to the lawsuit. Filed June 4th, 2025 in San Francisco. What exactly is Reddit claiming happened?
Well, the lawsuit lays out several key things based on the articles. First, unauthorized scraping.
Meaning?
Basically, using automated bots to hoover up massive amounts of content without permission. Reddit claims Anthropic's bots hit their forums over 100,000 times.
Wow, over 100,000 times. That's not subtle.
Not really, no. And Reddit says this wasn't just, against etiquette. They claim it directly violated their content policy and, crucially, their terms of service.
Ah, the terms of service, the contract you implicitly agree to when you use a site.
Exactly. So they're framing it as a breach of contract. That's a really important piece.
Okay, so scraping without permission, breaking the rules,
Yeah.
What else?
They also allege potential privacy violations. The concern is that Claude AI might have been trained using personal data scraped from Reddit users, all without their explicit consent.
That's a big one for users, obviously.
Huge. And finally, there's the unfair competition claim.
How so?
They're basically saying Anthropic used Reddit's own content, allegedly taken without permission, to build a competing product, Claude AI. And that this undercuts Reddit itself and also the partners like Google and OpenAI who did pay for access through those formal deals.
Right, competing using the very stuff they didn't pay for while others did. Okay, so those are the main charges. But what's really fascinating, as you mentioned, is Reddit's legal strategy here, led by their chief legal officer, Ben Lee.
Yes. The sources really highlight this. They're not leading with copyright infringement.
Which is usually the first thing you think of, right? Someone copying your stuff.
It is. But Reddit seems to be deliberately focusing more on the contract breach, those terms of service violations, and the unfair competition angle.
Why is that significant? Why that approach?
Well, look, proving copyright infringement with AI training data is tricky. It's technically complex. You often have to show not just that the AI learned from copyrighted material, but that its output somehow reproduces or substantially copies that specific material. And with AI learning patterns statistically, that link can be really hard to prove definitively in court.
Okay, gets muddy fast.
Very. But proving a contract breach. If Anthropic used automated tools to scrape the site, and the terms of service prohibit that kind of bulk scraping, which they often do, then proving that action occurred might be more straightforward.
Ah, so it shifts the focus from the AI's output to Anthropic's alleged actions in getting the data.
Precisely. It leverages Reddit's own rules, their terms, as the weapon. It's potentially a cleaner legal path, and it also reinforces why they value those paid partnerships. Those deals involve clear rules, payment, and supposedly safeguards for user privacy, things they claim were absent here.
So the message is, play by our rules or face consequences based on those rules.
Makes sense.
Now, what about Anthropic? They haven't responded to this lawsuit directly yet, as far as we know.
Not publicly in detail, no. But the sources brought up their past statements, particularly a letter to the U.S. Copyright Office back in 2023.
And what do they say then about training data generally?
Well, they argued their approach was, and I think the quote was, quintessentially lawful use of materials.
Strong words.
Yeah. They often use a technical defense, arguing that AI training isn't about direct copying, it's more about statistical analysis, learning patterns, understanding language structure from vast amounts of text.
So learning from it, not copying it, is the argument.
That's generally the line, yes. And they also frame this kind of data usage as being, necessary for innovation, for pushing AI forward. Progress requires data.
Okay, so you've got these two clashing views. Reddit saying, you broke our rules, potentially violated privacy, competed unfairly. Anthropic, historically at least, saying, our methods are lawful and necessary for innovation.
And that clash is why this case feels bigger than just Reddit and Anthropic.
Right. The implications could be quite broad, couldn't they?
Yeah.
What did the sources suggest about why this particular case might matter so much?
Several things make it stand out, according to the analysis we read. First, that focus on contract law and terms of service, not just copyright, that could become a template for other platforms.
A new playbook, potentially?
Could be. Second, the strong emphasis on user privacy protection. Raising the issue of consent for personal info used in training data, that really resonates.
Definitely.
It's forcing a conversation that maybe hasn't been central enough in some previous disputes. This case might help create sort of a clearer legal framework for these data fights in the AI era.
And what about the ripple effects if Reddit wins or even if they force a settlement on these terms?
Well, it could set some major legal precedents, especially around data ownership and usage rights for training AI.
Meaning?
It might really push the industry towards standardized licensing. AI companies might find they increasingly have to strike formal deals to access large data sets from platforms like Reddit.
Which could make developing these big AI models more expensive.
Potentially, yeah. There's an economic impact to consider. But on the flip side, and this is crucial for, everyone listening, it could drive much stronger privacy protections for user-generated content. If platforms have a clear legal path to enforce their terms and protect user data from unauthorized scraping for AI training, that's potentially a big win for individual users.
Right. So looking ahead then, what's the future of AI training data look like based on all this? Are we seeing a shift?
The sources definitely suggest a shift is underway, or at least accelerating. We're probably heading towards a model where formal licensing, clear agreements become much more common. The standard, maybe.
Less of a Wild West data grab.
Hopefully. There's this growing recognition of creator rights, even for individual user posts, and the value platforms provide. It seems the consensus is building around needing a balance.
A balance between
allowing AI innovation, which needs data, obviously, and ensuring fair compensation, content control, and especially protecting user privacy.
And this case could push regulators to step in more forcefully. New rules, maybe.
It could absolutely add pressure for a new regulatory framework, yeah. Or specific laws governing how AI companies can acquire and use training data, especially when it involves personal information or platform terms.
So boiling it down, this is really a conflict over the rules of engagement for AI development, isn't it?
I think so. Can AI developers tap into this massive ocean of online human expression freely? Or do the platforms hosting it and the users creating it have real enforceable rights and boundaries?
And Reddit versus Anthropic, with its specific legal strategy focusing on contract and privacy, it's testing those boundaries in a really direct, potentially powerful way.
It really feels like a pivotal case. Could reshape how this whole ecosystem works.
It truly could. Which leaves us all with a pretty big question to think about, doesn't it? As AI gets more and more powerful and its need for data just keeps growing.
Yeah.
How do we strike that balance? How do we fuel the innovation we want while also protecting the rights, the privacy, the control of the people whose words and ideas are the fuel? What's the right role for platforms, for the AI companies, and maybe most importantly for you, the user, in figuring that out?